And today we're going to talk about reasons why Master Gardeners are motivated to volunteer. Before we get into that, we're going to do a thank you, Sheri. Some announcements. Our discussion will be a little longer than 30 minutes. Sheri has a lot of data to share with us and excellent information, and so I hope most of you can stay on the call until the end. Just know that we'll go a little bit longer, and we will record it if you need to catch up and listen to some of the end of it. All right, and Sheri, thank you. Next slide.
All right, so I have a couple of announcements I wanted to share with everybody. If you don't know about Niche, the National Initiative for Consumer Horticulture, I really encourage you to find out about it. Get on our mailing list, and you simply go to consumerhort.org to get more information, find out about our goals and objectives and all the work that several of us have been doing. When I say several of us, I mean several of us in the Master Gardener community have been part of this effort, as well as the industry and academia and extension. So we'll be meeting next week in Atlanta, so there'll be more information coming, but I wanted to encourage you at this point to figure it out, get familiar with Niche and what we're doing. It's pretty exciting. Mike's on the line here today as well. He's coordinating the next Master Gardener Coordinator Conference, and that will be in August in Wisconsin. That's the August 6th through 9. And I understand we've got last-second opportunities, maybe through today, I think, to make hotel reservations. He's still accepting registration, I think, for the event. But again, a lot of great conversations happening at that conference, so you don't want to miss it. Another announcement is that it's almost time, believe it or not, it is almost time to put together our next national report. So we collect data in odd years for the previous even year. So 2018 is an even year. Starting this fall, we'll be nudging you, primarily state coordinators, to send us your state data so we can put this report together again. It's almost time as well for our food security impact evaluation work. We were pretty excited about our 2017 efforts, and folks were contributing to that. We'll be collecting additional 2018 data, so we'll start sending out reminders later this fall. But again, I want to put this on your mind, get this in front of you so that you become familiar with some of these projects and can help us out with them. And then lastly, just a reminder to take advantage of the resources available for state and local coordinators by our resource repository. So if you're not familiar with that site, be sure to acquaint yourself. That is a long address there, but if you just simply Google Extension Master Gardener Coordinators Repository, you'll find it.
Okay, and I want to remind everyone we've got our upcoming presentation scheduled. You can find more information on the link that I posted in the chat box. I would encourage all of you to go back to the previous webinars. There's excellent resources that have been provided by coordinators across the country that you might find helpful to your program. There's spreadsheets that you can use, infographic templates. Jeff did a great job with the last webinar and went through the chat box and provided answers to all of the questions and then gave me a PDF, so that's been posted online. So lots of great resources. Upcoming presentations, we have Charlotte speaking in July about volunteer retention, which is something I think all of us as coordinators can learn more strategies on how to retain excellent volunteers, and that'll be a great follow-up to Sheri's talk today. And then in August, Anne will speak to us about how to create a visioning session for your Master Gardener volunteer program, and in September, Nicole will follow up with a citizen science project that was successful in Oregon. All right, so if you could do us a favor and let us know what state you're from, go ahead and type your answer in the chat box. We like to see where people are tuning in from across the country. And I see Pat is my colleague in Sarasota. Good to see you, Pat. I see North Carolina and Nebraska, Oregon, New York, California, Wisconsin, yay. Hawaii, California, lots of states. All right, thanks everyone. And before Sheri gets started, if any of you are doing programs that you want to, share with the rest of your coordinators, these webinars are an opportunity for you to present to your peers on a national level. So please contact me or a member of our committee, national committee, and let us know what you're interested in. There's opportunities to present next year, and even in December, I've got an opening for an open forum, but we can squeeze you in if you want to do it this year. So we encourage any of you to contact us if you want to do a presentation. All right, so Sheri is up next, and Sheri's going to talk with us about understanding your volunteers for better program service. And Sheri's with the University of Georgia Department of Horticulture, and she's also done several webinars for us this year that you can go back and listen to. They're always excellent. So go ahead, Sheri, and thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. Thanks, everybody, for joining in. We wouldn't have this information, wouldn't be able to talk about the things in this PowerPoint today if you all hadn't helped with this data collection in 2016. So I have to say, every time I talk about this work, thank you so much to the many state and local coordinators who sent out on behalf of the project our survey. Master gardeners are always vocal when they participate in survey work. They're very enthusiastic and energetic, as you well know, and they will tell you exactly what they think of that work. So I really appreciate you putting it out there and engaging them in this research and answering their questions and so forth. I also want to give a shout out to Denny Schrock and Cynthia Haynes at Iowa State, who also were in on those early collaborations and contributions to the project. I say just be careful if you're stuck in a poster session next to me. You might get drug into a big project or something. But this was a pretty sizable project, almost unique in the way it was rolled out, but it was a Qualtrics online survey that I sent out as the project investigator at the top of this triangle here. I sent it out to state coordinators, got their buy-in. The state coordinators sent it out to local coordinators, got their buy-in, and then local coordinators sent the information on to local master gardeners. And so at each stage in the process, anonymous responses came back to me. So we had input from state and local coordinators as well as master gardeners. And the project remained open for 2 months, and we were sending reminders and all that kind of stuff. So that's, if that vaguely sounds familiar, that this is what we were doing. We had great response, both at the coordinator level as well as the master gardener level. But today I'm just talking about master gardeners, so that's all I'm showing you. We had over 9,000 responses collected. That's a lot of data. And when it was all sorted out, sifted out, we had 7,498 valid responses. So you can look at this map that is color-coded by Extension Master Gardener programmatic regions. So there's 6 regions in the U.S. for which we have representation on our Extension Master Gardener National Committee. And it's kind of our structure, our hierarchy, if you will, just it's an organizational tool for us. So this is the response rate, and you can see, we had larger responses from some and lesser responses from others, but overall had great representation. So already some of this data is in print, and if you're interested in reading afterwards, you can go find this. The first article in the series came out in Horticulture in April. So that's online. You can get to that. If by some chance you don't have access to that subscription, just let me know and I can send you a copy of the PDF. But this is the early demographic work. The demographic descriptions of our master gardeners and our coordinators are found in this paper. So there'll be multiple stories to tell. There's more stuff coming. So our research told us that it told us who our master gardeners are. And as you look at this information, I know you're going to recognize it. You're gonna say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So when I say Extension Master Gardeners active in 2015, that was the most complete annual cycle prior to the survey. So a lot of the questions were, how many hours did you report in 2015? And, did you meet criteria to be an active master gardener? So from all of this, we learned that our master gardeners are an average of 64.8 years old. They range from 15 to 95. We're mostly female, 82% female, primarily Caucasian, very well educated, predominantly retired, and they report, our volunteers report economic means. One of the research angles that I put to the data was separating our respondents into generations. So I was working with the traditionalist generation that was born 1925 to 42, baby boomers born 1943 to 1960, Gen X born 1961 to 81, and Gen Y born 1982 to 2000. So if you look at the split on this, you can see that most of our volunteers are right here in the baby boomer. I'll pick up my highlighter here. They're right here in this baby boomer generation. The interesting thing to remember is that when the Master Gardener program started in the 1970s, we were here. We were recruiting traditionalists, folks that were in their 50s and 60s at that point in time. So our program is 45 years old if you go back to the original class. So we're still recruiting, we are still training folks in the traditionalist generation, but we are predominantly baby boomers. And as we go along this afternoon, I'm going to be telling you a lot of feedback things that I've learned through the study. And everywhere I go, people are asking for younger volunteers. We need younger blood, and that's what the volunteers tell me. That's what the coordinators and people connected with the program. We need younger volunteers, more energetic. We're getting old. We need help with our projects and so forth. So we look to these two generations, Gen X and Gen Y, for some information and insight into the next generation. So what this study confirmed is that they are indeed interested in the Master Gardener program. They are there. Gen Y obviously is just coming into they're coming of age into that they're not quite mid-adult stage, so they're really working, and some of them are even still in high school. So with that regard, they're not all of them are quite at the stage where they're eligible for the Master Gardener program or even able to engage in it. So we're looking at these generations for some clues. Very interesting piece of data jumped out of the research, and that is our age at training for each generation is getting younger and younger and younger. I find that very encouraging, very interesting, but not perfect, not a perfect solution to our recruitment questions. But if you'll see that folks, the Gen X volunteers, they train at an average age of 43. Our Gen Ys are training at an average age of 28.2. That is different. That is younger than our previous volunteers or traditionalists with an average training age of 65.7 and baby boomers who had a training age of 58.1. So you put on your thinking caps and think about, okay, if I've got younger folks in my training classroom, what does that mean for how I train my volunteers? Another piece of information that came out of the study was the years of active service. We know that Master Gardeners really enjoy the program, really enjoy their experience, and they stay with the program a long time. So the mean, the average years of service was 7.65 years. The median, so that halfway point, was 6 years. And the most frequent response was 2. So we had a lot of second-year Master Gardeners participating in the report. So, in the study. And you can see here with the way this graph plots out, we did have folks that had been with the program since very, very early years that were still willing to contribute their perspectives on the program and their experience. This graph is a little misleading because I've clustered the service hours into 10-hour ranges. But if you look at how many service hours volunteers reported in 2015, the average was 100.74 hours. And this takes into account folks that are trainees and usually have a higher volunteer requirement than folks that are returning and have a lesser volunteer requirement. So it kind of averages out. Our median point, 54 hours, and of course the most frequent number of hours reported was 40. So again, this is pretty consistent with what I see in Georgia, pretty consistent with what I think of when I think of our Master Gardeners. So the study did allow for inactive as well as active volunteers to participate. And when I filtered out the inactive folks, we realized that they were a little bit younger, so average age is 61, a little bit less time as an Extension Master Gardener, so their average service years was 5.05, excuse me. Just 1 year of service was the mode, so almost a third of them had 1 year of service, and on average, regular veteran Master Gardeners had 7.65 years of service, and the mode was higher. So there's a slightly higher percentage of individuals who work in this inactive group, and you'll hear that theme throughout the data, throughout the discussions I have. Out of curiosity, I asked why. If you were inactive, why were you inactive? And most folks cited personal reasons. Maybe it's illness or family. So you can see that, but no time to volunteer comes in at second with a 24% of responses. So the rest of the work pretty much focuses on active Master Gardeners for the time being. We asked if they were satisfied with their experience, and 82.7% of folks said they were moderately or extremely satisfied. And, that's interesting in itself. But when I asked this question, how satisfied are you with your experience, and then cross-tabbed it with the question, would you recommend your Master Gardener experience to others? We got some pretty interesting questions. So what strikes me as interesting is this number right here, that 91% of respondents said, yes, I'm going to recommend this experience to others. And then 11.9% of responses say they're not satisfied with the program, but still would recommend the program to others. So we've just got, just a very few people that are truly dissatisfied enough to not recommend the program to others. So I think that speaks pretty highly of their experience, of what they're engaging in. So when we ask them to rate their local Extension Master Gardener volunteer program, once again, the scores were very high. So we're looking here, 87% of responses in the good or the excellent category for local program rating. We asked their opinion of their local coordinator. Again, extremely high. So this was a 4-point scale. They were asked to rate these different characteristics, and you can see that the means were very high. The lowest being 3.68 in terms of availability, but in high 90s, the percentage of sometimes or often that choice was selected. So again, very high opinions, for the most part, of local coordinators. I mean, some of the quotes, I love my Master Gardener. I think everybody should have so-and-so as its program coordinator. I loved it when specific names were mentioned, because I know a lot of the people that were mentioned. And it's just really great to know you and to know that you're doing a great job with your programs. So I did ask the question about suggestions. What suggestions would they have for improvements at the local level? And what kept coming through were these messages about communication and engagement and more staff funding. And I've got more detail about this question here in just a second. So we asked our folks why they volunteer. And the value, we know that the value for Master Gardeners is being part of a group and the personal development that they get and the opportunity to network with others. We know that there's not just one reason why folks volunteer, why they engage with the program. So we look to some of the psychology behind this. We start looking at this question from a research standpoint. We look at the research behind it. Clary, Snyder, Ridge, Copeland, Stukas, all of those folks, Clary and Stukas really are the leaders in this area. They propose a functional theory that people volunteer, even though they might be doing the same thing. It means something different. They have different reasons why individuals have different reasons why they do the same task that somebody else might do. So when we look at it from a program management standpoint, we might think that it's the same for everybody, but it's not. It's everybody, our volunteers, each of our volunteers come to the program for different reasons, different motivations. They want different things out of their volunteer experience. So there are 6 functions in this theory: values, understanding, enhancement, career, social, and protective. Career is probably the easiest one to understand because we're looking at our volunteer experience to gain either contacts or skills that will aid us in our professional or paid responsibilities or roles. When we talk about values, these are things that that people do. It's this internal wiring, these internal priorities. Understanding is really about learning. It's about, expanding what they know, their knowledge area. Enhancement, it's about personal development. I can feel better about myself. I'm growing and developing psychologically through my volunteer work. Social, that makes a lot of sense too. It has to do, motivations come from social relationships. And protective really is about personal problems, saying volunteering, for example, is a good escape from my own troubles. So again, these are 6 categories of functions that people bring to their volunteer role. We've had several studies of Extension Master Gardeners previously that utilize the VFI. We call this the Volunteer Functions Inventory. It is a research tool, survey instrument. Denny Schrock, again, conducted one in Missouri and also one of his grad students in Iowa. So when we look at these, we can see how these understanding and values and enhancement in the first study top the list right up there, the top 3, and that career function way down here on the bottom. When Bren worked on this in 2015, 2016, his functions didn't factor as cleanly as Denny's did previously, but you also see the similarity in that career was there on the bottom. But if you look, he kind of reclassified his functions, those learning functions, very similar to understanding. The altruism, the desire to do for others very closely aligns with values. So you can see some connections there, some similarities in those previous studies. So in this current study, once again, those very similar motivations and functions top the list. I've just put in here 10 of the top motivations. You can see here right at the, I know you're not surprised that Master Gardeners value learning more about horticulture and home gardening. It's consistently why they come to our program. They want to learn more. But as you go down this list, closely woven in with that need to understand and learn more are those values. They feel it's important to help others. They feel like they're part of a horticultural cause that's important to them. Genuine concern for others. And down here, in the top 10, number 10, is a social-oriented function, and I would agree with that. And that again came through in the open-ended responses of the survey. So just a little bit about, just a few notes about motivations, about some practical things, what that means to us. Our younger Master Gardeners, remember, we're looking for younger folks to come into our program. We already know they're engaged. It appeals to the program. The Master Gardener program appeals to them. But what are they looking for? So our younger folks have strong values, career, and social motivations. So they do feel it's important to help others. So those altruistic motivations are there, but they also are interested in developing skills or making connections that will help them in a professional way. So be thinking about that. And we know from all kinds of sources that Gen Y is very technologically oriented. And again, that came through in the themes, the data themes, that technology, we've got to embrace it and utilize it to our best advantage. So be keeping that in the back of your mind. And then also our younger volunteers have a social motivation. So they're interested, in the broader community, in connecting with people, and of course that's service. We learned about, for our older Master Gardeners, that our social motivations are more important to them. And this makes sense. If you're retired, volunteering gives you an opportunity to go and connect with other folks in your community, to have friends. It just makes sense that our older volunteers value that. And another interesting thing is that rural Master Gardeners, and of course we have only a small percentage of Master Gardener programs in rural areas, but the Master Gardeners there indicate an enhancement motive. So volunteering makes me feel better about myself. And I saw one comment that says, here I am on a farm and my expertise has never been valued, but the Master Gardener program gave that individual an opportunity to get past the farm boundaries, and that those skills were of value to others. So just things to keep in mind as you are contemplating your own program, and how you can appeal to your existing or new volunteers. When we talk about motivations behind volunteering, we can't go too far without also talking about, all right, if they're motivated to come to our program for these reasons, why, or what do they get out of our volunteer experience? And I like a Boyer's study with Tina Wolochek and Jane Zychek in Texas a couple years ago. They used some different tools, some different survey instruments to collect data, and they looked at Master Gardeners and the benefits of volunteering, and their data showed that Master Gardeners improved their quality of life because of their volunteer experience. So this is a little different track than the psychological motivations and functions that this study is looking at. So we know that they increase physical activity, social activity, self-esteem, and nutrition through their volunteer capacity. So when we look at benefits in this study, we see that values, those altruistic benefits, top the list, followed by understanding. And like I said, the career is, it's not rocket science there, that it's pretty low on the list. That's not why folks largely come to the Master Gardener program. So again, thinking about this in very real terms and how this benefits our work, our youngest Master Gardeners indicate the highest protective and career benefits. So career makes sense. I'm learning skills, making connections for my professional capacity. But the protective, volunteering at this organization allows me opportunity to escape some of my own trouble. So that's pretty interesting, a different sort of benefit than is typical with some of our previous data. And then our rural Master Gardeners also indicated deriving more social benefit from their Master Gardener volunteer opportunities. And I think that makes sense as well. So our motives, our motivations are pretty others-oriented, those high values, understanding, and enhancement. That makes sense. That's pretty typical of folks who volunteer. The career, social, and protective, less important functions, and we saw that here in this data as well. And we do see some differences across different groups of volunteers. So it's important as coordinators to be aware of that and to make that, take that to our advantage, to engage folks and to make the experience meaningful for them as well. So our functions, like I said, the understanding still tops the functions of volunteering as a Master Gardener, career still at the bottom. But the interesting thing is that there's a lot of overlap between this study and the 2016 study that Tackle published, as well as the 2000 study by Denny. So over time, it seems like our Master Gardeners, we're still providing something that these volunteers want and are very interested in engaging. So again, keep in mind as volunteer coordinators that the decision to volunteer, it depends on that good match. So we've got to understand what our volunteers want, what they're motivated by, and then match them with volunteer opportunities that we have available. And that's where your interviews and your reference checking and, you know, your early conversations help you get to know your folks and figure out what they are after, so that you can do a good job at matching them within your program. So again, as you consider your program, think about, you know, urban, suburban, rural. We've got all kinds of those programs that may impact what your volunteers want when they come to your program. When you think about your volunteers themselves, yes, they want to learn more about horticulture and gardening, but are you allowing them to meet their values, to satisfy that altruistic function? And, you know, if you're interested in recruiting a younger volunteer base, consider what's important to them. And again, making that match between, you know, what's in it for them and what's in it for us, and find that win-win spot. So just a suggestion that you might want to consider using the VFI questions in your volunteer applications. That will give you some information, you know, on those folks who score highly in those understanding and values category, they are likely to be good volunteers. So that's just a very practical suggestion that you might consider. And then here's some information, some more stuff I pulled out of the open-ended questions that kind of impact our future direction with the Master Gardener program. So I asked the question, what is needed for future improvement of the Master Gardener program? And I gave 5 options. The first one had to do with recruitment strategies. The second one had to do with service opportunities. And we talked about training strategies. Do we need a shift in programming priorities? Or, hey, we're good. No changes necessary. So this was a pretty interesting question for Master Gardeners. A good bit of them, almost 10% of them, really didn't understand this question, didn't know how to respond to it, or openly said they didn't know anything about the state level of their program. They were just really locally focused, and they really didn't feel like they could answer this program, this question about the improvement of their state program. So I found that very interesting. And again, here in Georgia, we would have the same thing. We would have folks that really aren't connected beyond the local level. Their experience with the Master Gardener program is very much a local view. But the highest, the greatest number of responses for improvement items that came through had to do with money. People were concerned about the financial resources, the state support, local support to have the program, to have coordinators in place, to have extension agents. Sometimes, there have been position vacancies for some time, but some states, and it differs. Any given year, there could be a money conversation for any given state. So it did take up, it was almost 15% of those responses that we need more money, we need more funds, more financial support so that this program really can do what it's created to do. You can see that there was some comments about communication needs, leadership, Master Gardener leadership specifically. When I say program distribution, we're talking about comments about we need Master Gardener programs in every county in our state, or we need more rural programs, or something, there'll be specific commentary on urban or suburban types of programs. When we talk about resources, we're talking about online resources or publications or toolkits, things that Master Gardeners need for their program. Recruitment, over and over and over again, and the recruitment and the diversity and inclusion bullet, they're hard to separate because there was so many comments. Again, younger volunteers, we're aging, we need help, there's so much more demand, so many more projects than we can meet with our current volunteer base. We need active people. We want more men to be Master Gardeners, younger, and then a recurring theme of diversify, change up our volunteer base, make it accessible to everybody. There was also almost 5% of comments focused on publicity. The comment that the community doesn't even know that the Master Gardener program is there, that Extension is there, that they're not aware of the resources, that the Master Gardeners really felt like their programs could just explode. They could just do so much more if the public were aware of it. There were a few rules and bureaucracy-related complaints, 7%. I'd say that's pretty typical. I was glad that that percentage was not any higher. But from my own experience, when someone is very very negative, it tends to weigh in my mind, and I have to step back and say, you know what? That's a few. That's just a few of the overall number. So anyway, other needs, other improvement items include projects, doing different projects, training needs, and again, a lot of comments on having online training and technology as part of our offerings. A lot of conversation about retaining folks, about building programs that people want to remain a part of. And in that retention theme, you would find messages about social and fun and being with people and having connections and friendships and relationships and so forth. So those are all all connect back to those functions that we just inventoried. And again, confirms that it's not just one single thing, but it's the combination, it's the whole that makes the difference in our volunteer programs. But I also found it very interesting to see that our priorities, there were almost 12% of our improvement items were related to the priorities, the things that we should be doing, should be addressing through our Master Gardener program. So just a little deeper dive into those open-ended comments about future improvements on our state programs. I also asked Master Gardeners what they thought their most important personal accomplishment was as a Master Gardener. I love reading these comments. They are fantastic. And I just could only put a few. Carrie, I see your question, but can we hold it? I'll hold your question till we get to the end. So there's thousands of responses here, and these are just a few, but Master Gardeners really, value being an active part of the community. And look at this first one. I'm still a very new Master Gardener, so I have a lot of potential left to go. Love the way that was written. But my greatest accomplishment is having a community impact. I'm able to share my knowledge for the benefit of my community, from the neighbors I've known for years to the people I have never met looking for advice, helping people to help themselves. This one here, neighborhoods all over the city have adopted a stop sign triangle, so fun to see the different flower gardens every few blocks. That sounds a lot like America in Bloom. Introducing children with no gardening background to the idea and importance of joy of gardening. So there's really good stuff that Master Gardeners are very proud of with their Master Gardener experience. This question, I was looking into some of the open-ended responses for improvements at the county level. So I haven't had a chance to tally all of that in a nice little graphic that you saw on the state level responses, but here are just some of those open-ended responses. So 0, it's outstanding on every level. I love those kinds of comments, and wonderful as it is. But then we get into things like we need to get everyone active. So this concern that everybody's engaged and participating. And here's that message again about attracting younger volunteers, enlarging the core of active volunteers. Again, the money comments, the money concerns were laced all throughout these comments. So this comment was pretty introspective. It says, with staff cuts, it's hard for the overall extension office to handle everything they're supposed to cover. More staff is needed. So it was very positive, very understanding. And then this one says, local extension agents have changed their approach to volunteers. If we're not producing enough volunteer hours, they will lose their positions or at least part of their funding. And this has changed the relationship entirely. So I put that up there because that's pretty important. That if that's the perception, I know that we all have increasing responsibilities to measure and to report and to evaluate and to convey impact. But that in itself affects our volunteer relationship as well. So being mindful of that. What the answer is, that's a long conversation in itself. Um, I put these questions, these comments out here just to provide insight and to provide help. Our agent is not involved and she doesn't teach classes. I wish we had an agent who was interested and involved. So again, they value that interaction with their local coordinators. And again, that relationship, that connection that they have with folks, it's pretty important to the overall equation. Saw a lot of this. We've had a lot of changes recently, and I'm not sure who our local coordinator is. And I know here in Georgia, we often are confused about, what is the state program office? Who runs the program? Is it the university? Is it an organization? What's going on? So volunteers can be very confused about the structure of the Master Gardener program itself. And of course, changes are always hard for everybody, for all people, but the Master Gardeners are no exception. So long-standing practices being chucked out the window with zero explanation or discussion. So again, that's where that relationship comes in handy, and that ability to sit down with folks and discuss, talk about, work through those changes that are inevitable. They're just part of growth. So I just put some words down here at this last section here, some of the themes: money, people, communication, support, younger volunteers, new agents and coordinators, changing relationships, changing expectations. All of those hit that list, and this is more an observation/complaint list, and I don't mean that terribly negative, because for the most part it wasn't overwhelmingly negative, but not so much items to improve our local program, do this. So you have to kind of read between the lines in some of these comments and figure out what you would need to do locally. Another question I asked on this survey was, what is the most important contribution of your Master Gardener program in the local community? And I was delighted with these answers as well. Very, very community-minded, very resource-oriented, assisting others, getting them access to information, getting their questions answered, this awareness of extension services. Yes, there was some beautification, and we know there are lots of community benefits, community and social benefits that result from having gardens in our communities, but really a strong educational awareness theme going through that information, so going through those responses. So again, I love reading these. And there were a few, I shared these with some others a couple months ago, but I couldn't have said it any better. Some of these are direct quotes from those responses. It has shown the importance of plants and ecology to the well-being of the general population. The Master Gardener program has trained hundreds of gardeners for the community, keeping gardening a hip, cool, and respected endeavor for all who want to participate in gardening. I'm thinking we need a t-shirt or something with that on there. So good stuff, very good stuff. All right, so that's what I had to share with you, and just from a very practical standpoint, so that not just dumping data on you, to apply this, I encourage you to go to our coordinators resource repository. And if you don't know, I'm engaged in that project pretty heavily, so hence I'm always talking about it. So here's a tiny URL if that is helpful to you, but like I said, you can find it by Googling it. But when you go to the coordinators repository, there are useful selections in there. This is actually a webinar recording that talks about moving forward with founders. So founders being those folks, those very long-serving volunteers, changing expectations and how to work through that. So that might be a resource to you. There are some articles about generational differences in volunteers. Those may be helpful to you. This article, Boomers and Beyond, 12 Best Practices for Vital Volunteer Resources into the Future, actually makes a very important point that, volunteering, the world of volunteering is changing. There are real changes there that we sense. But the best management practices aren't going to change, but it is how we work with these different individual groups and different individual generations. So there's a lot of food for thought in that particular article. Some considerations if you're recruiting volunteers, some different things. This is out of Washington State University. Some very helpful guidelines, even though it is put together by Washington State. It really is helpful if you're contemplating recruiting more volunteers. University of Minnesota has a interest and skills form. So if you want to get to know your folks, find out what they might be interested in, you might want to consider this tool. Use that locally. Then there is a couple of articles on motivation. This is actually another one of Washington State's narrated PowerPoint series that will be helpful. All right, so just to summarize, I over and over again, I come back to our relationship with our volunteers remains key for the success of our programs, and I encourage you to invest in getting to know your folks, and I think that will impact retention. It will impact their satisfaction and how long they stay with that program. Let them get to know you as well. It's very easy to feel too busy to do that, but I encourage you, it's well worth the investment. And as I tell my local coordinators, balance the plants and the people when it comes to your program. Master gardeners are very definitely a powerful outreach method. These folks, these volunteers are so passionate, so energetic. They are willing to come alongside of us, partner with us, help us educate others. They can help keep Extension relevant, connected to the community, to current issues and needs, and they certainly help us reach so many more people than we can possibly do on our own. So right off of the NEFA website for horticultural program areas, we are striving with our Master Gardener programs for environmentally sensitive management of landscape plantings and gardens and providing that positive horticultural impact on human health and well-being. So good stuff. So that wraps it up. I want to go back to Carrie's question, and then Nicole, if folks have other questions, they're welcome to put them in the chat box. I think I managed to bring it in a timely fashion.
Yes, great job.
All right, so Carrie asks, what were some of their comments to priorities, improvement items? Does that mean that we wish we had different priorities? So there was a question on the survey that asked, that provided a list of program priorities, things like, responding to individual inquiry or request for information, or should we be focusing on behavioral change related to sustainable landscaping? Should we be focusing on youth? Should we be focusing on historic heritage gardens? Should we be focusing on demonstration gardens? So there were 6 different questions in the survey related to priorities, and the open-ended responses here mostly they commented on all of those types of things, as well as the message came through loud and clear that food security is a current issue. So all of the work with community gardens and gleaning gardens and teaching people how to grow food. And of course, our impact and evaluation team is working on that topic currently. So that's the nature of priorities. Yeah. And in terms of, do they wish we had different priorities? I see some discussion about, in some states, more hands-on types of engagement, types of projects are not approved or not promoted. So Master gardeners love to get their hands in the soil. So yes, they would love to see more of those kinds of things if they're in an area where they're not supposed to do those sorts of things. But overall, I think it was pretty good response. Great question. Any other questions?
Sheri, I have a comment. I just wanted to say thank you for including the journal articles throughout the slides, and I'll try to pull some of those and then put them on the EMG page so folks have a list of resources. But if anyone's doing, annual reports or packets, there's probably some of those resources included in the journal articles and the online repository, that they can cite or use information.
Yes.
So I encourage everyone to take a look at those documents when you have time.
Yes, all those resources are right out of the repository, so that they can go right there and find them, get links to them.
Did anyone find anything that surprised them from this presentation? If you did, go ahead and unmute your phone or put it in the chat box. I know listening to Sheri's talk, it was encouraging to be reminded that the majority of volunteers were very satisfied with our programs, and most of them became inactive because of family or illness and not necessarily something that coordinators did. And so that's reassuring to hear. I think we
Yeah.
all try very hard to make sure we have a great volunteer program.
Yes. So just in the chat box, Mike commented on the urban-rural participation. It has this interest, but he doesn't really have a question at this point. I would agree that was pretty interesting as well. In the first paper that I published, that's about demographics. The master gardeners were the same in terms of the average age or the years of service that they have put into the Master Gardener program, or the number of hours they reported. Those were three variables I was measuring in the first paper. And there was no difference in urban, suburban, or rural Master Gardener programs. So pretty interesting stuff. I was going to tell you that by way of this data, we had 2.1% rural programs or Master Gardeners connected with rural Master Gardener programs. 80.5% were urban and 17.2% suburban. So question from Taylor, do you have data on younger volunteers paired with flipped classrooms versus traditional classrooms? I do not. I did not look into teaching methods in this study. So you probably, if you're coming to Wisconsin in August, I think there's going to be some conversation about teaching methods at the conference. So that might be interesting for you. Any other questions? I will say, Nicole, when I launched this project, that I promised to share state data with state and local coordinators, and I haven't been able to get that completed, but I do still promise to do that, still intend to do that. So I'll be sharing that information. It'll most likely be into next year before I'm able to do that, but it is very, very helpful insight.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, because I think many of us sent it out, or even the state coordinators sent out your original survey questions. And if we can, find some of the responses either locally or on a statewide basis, we can extrapolate that and take the good and the constructive comments and figure out how to improve our program. So I know that probably takes a ton of time and work, but that is something that we can directly use in our local programs. So I appreciate you
Yes.
Still trying to work through that.
Yes. When you have 7,500 responses, everything takes a while to crank through.
Yes,
so
I can imagine.
Yeah, so there were 39 states for responding Master Gardeners. I don't even know how many counties. I don't have that data crunched, but many counties that were represented. So I will share that as I can, because yes, it is helpful.
Yeah, this is just a comment. Also, I found it interesting that some of the volunteers thought that the hours were most important and that the agents would lose their positions. Even if that's, incorrect, or the perception, that was really interesting to me, that people said that.
Yes. Yes.
Because I think, we always ask our volunteers to input the data and make sure they're staying up to date with their hours. And so I wonder if sometimes that translates into,
Right.
This relates to my position when it may not, but that could be their perception. So that's something that I'm going to think about a little bit more in how I talk about parity and demographics and accountability and ROI, just making sure that, they see it as just data. It doesn't have anything to do with jobs and positions. So maybe that will help them a little bit.
Well, it does in a larger sense, in that we've got to do a great job at telling our story. We can't not tell it. We can't not track the impact that our work is doing. I mean, we just live in a day of increased accountability. And,
right.
there is an expectation that volunteers will help, collect that information. They've got to report. They have that obligation to report, share their numbers and their contacts and all of that sort of stuff. It helps us tell our story. So yeah, it's a careful conversation to have.
Right, I agree. And I think where I'm looking at it is that I don't want them to think, we're taking all the fun out of it and it's only about the numbers, because it's certainly not, even though that's super important. But it's just, you're right, making sure you're crafting those conversations well,
Yes.
and thinking about your approach.
Yes. So Bill has a comment here. I know Bill from my days in Virginia. It feels like a long time ago, Bill, but thank you for carrying the flag. He says that I must have picked up my wisdom from my years with the Master Gardener program in Virginia. Well, I was tried by fire in my years there in Virginia. But he says that we still find in rural Southside Virginia, volunteers still want that hands-on. Yes, that hands-on is important. So great feedback, great comments. Here's my email address. I'm so happy to chat with you if there's anything else I can help you with. And I'll be in Wisconsin in I don't know, how long is that away? A couple of weeks, it seems like. I'm going to blink my eyes and it'll be here. So. All right, you want me to go ahead and forward, Nicole?
Sure. Okay, so we are going to record this webinar and we'll post it on the YouTube site and then provide a link on our Extension Master Gardener Coordinator's discussion page. And I just want to remind folks, make sure that you're signed up for the EMG Coordinator updates. It's a two-step process, so if you have other agents in your state that you think might be interested in our monthly webinars or just getting on the listserv, this is where they would sign up. Go to extension.org, join our community of practice, and then you and the other agents would be able to get conference updates, opportunities for the volunteers, information about upcoming webinars, and you just pretty much stay in the loop. Also, if anyone leaves a position and wants to unsubscribe, you need to go to this site and unsubscribe from the listserv, and then that will take you off the email communication. Right? And I want to thank everyone for taking time out of your day to listen to the webinar. Sheri, you did a fantastic job as always, and we really appreciate the time and effort that you put into this and the excellent resources and data that you shared with us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. I hope you all have a great rest of your week. Thanks, Sheri.
You're welcome, Nicole. Glad to do it.